Hey y'all, hey y'all, hey. All right, y'all. Welcome to the Dr. Kiki Ramsey Show. I'm your host, Dr. Kiki Ramsey, and we really do have a really amazing topic today. We are going to be talking all about centering diversity within organizations. And y'all know the times call for this conversation. The times call for this conversation. And I'm so excited to welcome my friend, my colleague, Tracie Daniels to the show. Tracie, welcome, friend.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. I'm really excited to be with you and to have this conversation.
Oh my gosh. So, Tracie, I could go on and on about everything that you are doing in this space, but just give everybody a quick introduction to yourself.
Sure. So, my name is Tracie Daniels, and I own an HR consulting practice, Synergy Consulting. I started almost like 5 years ago, so we're excited about that. I have been an HR practitioner for over 25 years. So that's where I got my start in HR and OD. And when DEI just had the D&I, or when it was the AA, right? Affirmative action.
Right.
That's how long we've been in this space. That's how long I've been in this work. And so, part of that time I spent as a therapist. So I have a degree in counseling that does come in handy when you're doing DE&I work. And so just excited to be here. And that has everything that I have experienced up to this point has prepared me for the work that we're doing now. So I'm really excited to be living my purpose.
I love it. I love it. And it's so needed in this whole world, this work, this workplace. And so we're gonna dive into it. And so first though, I want to ask you, what is your superpower? What is your strength?
So, okay. So I have to admit that one of my favorite superheroes growing up was Wonder Woman.
Yes.
Her and the Bionic Woman. So I went back and forth, but I was all on Wonder Woman. Like I was Wonder Woman for Halloween 7 years straight. Like that type of Wonder Woman. And so when I think about my superpowers and I think about me as an individual and in this space and in this work that I have dedicated half of my life to, Wonder Woman had a truth lasso or something that she would, whip on people.
Yes.
And I don't have that, but I think it's something that emanates from me that triggers the ability to connect with others. And so I think, particularly in doing this work and having those uncomfortable conversations, people want to understand and be safe in the moment. And if I step outside of myself and observe myself and how I interact with clients and individuals on a regular basis, it's really my ability to connect in a way that others can't, that allows people to be more comfortable, to be more vulnerable, right? And to be more authentic. So that's, I think, my superpower.
That's a superpower. Okay. That's a superpower. And I mean, it works both in the workplace and at home, right? Because we know we just were talking about being a mother and all the juggling that we have to do when it comes to that. And so that also works in our personal and our professional lives. And I just want to say, if you are joining us live today for the Dr. Kiki Ramsey Show, what I would love you to do is place your name in the chat. Let us know where you are calling from or tuning in from so we can potentially give you a shout out. All right. So you've been doing this work. When I say this work, I mean work around diversity, equity, and inclusion for quite some time now. So have I. We both have lived experiences of being Black women in the workplace and all of that. But I want to really know, like, why? Why did you get, started in this work in the first place? Because I think that we all come to it maybe for a different reason, but why did you come to doing this work? Hey, Jordan, thanks for joining us today.
So why? Oh, that's a great start. First, as I said, I don't know that I chose it. I think it kind of chose me. So my undergrad was in psychology. So I was always interested in helping others. And so right out of school, I went into training and education, right? Helping others learn, helping others grow. And then that evolved into human resources development and again, affirmative action, diversity and inclusion, and then now DE&I. So I've been in that space in examining it for years. It's been a part of me, and I love it because I love to make the connection for people. I love when the light bulb comes off. And I've said this before, I'm an educator at heart. So I always seek to educate and make people more aware of who they are, right? And how they may be interpreting things and how others may be interpreting things. So my why is easy. Why I continue knowing the challenges that this work brings, right? And knowing the struggles and in some cases trauma that this work brings is because I know that I'm fulfilling a greater purpose. Right. And so, once I tapped into that, I don't have a choice but to keep going because it is my purpose. And most people, right, don't realize their purpose this early in life. I have, and so I'm going to appreciate it, nurture it, and carry it forward.
I love it. Well, I wrote a book on purpose, finding purpose. And because I believe in that. I believe that we all have these beautiful, special gifts. And our job is to figure out what it is and then to share it with the world. And so I think that that's so very, very important. And I love it that you said that's why you continue in the space, because the space, is not easy to be in, right? I think people think sometimes because you may have a lived experience or whatever, that it may be easier to be in this space. But no, it's hard. And the books that we have to read to help others navigate through, such as CAST or something like that, baby, that was hard. It took me a long time. I had started reading particularly CAST. I was listening to the audiobook when I was walking on the treadmill in the morning, and I started getting mad. I was
right.
I was angry. I was like, I can't read this in the morning. This ain't gonna work. I can't do this to myself in the morning. This is not how I want to set my day up. So I think that it's so important for you to be called to this work. And I also do think that the lived experience of this work is also a very unique eye that others might not have, that gives us an edge when we're doing work around diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yes.
Hey, Iris from Washington, D.C. Thank you, friend, for joining us on the Dr. Kiki Ramsey Show today. Some of y'all, the listeners, might not know, but Iris is our good sister friend, and she actually introduced Tracie and I to each other. And so we're so forever grateful to you and for your friendship, Iris. So speaking of challenges, right? It's been a challenging couple of years, like honestly, right? So, I started PCADI, which is the Positive Psychology Coaching and Diversity Institute, in the wake of George Floyd. And there's just been so much more happening recently. It was this young girl, Kayla, I think, just who was assaulted at the University of Kentucky just recently. A lot of racial slurs to her. So it keeps happening, right? All this keeps happening. But do you think that organizations are losing their focus on diversity now? Even though it might not be happening like it used to in the media, but I mean, there's still a whole bunch of stuff going on. But do you think organizations are losing their focus on diversity?
So that's a good question. I'll start from, 2018, 2019, right? When I was having the conversations with organizations about their diversity strategy in 2018 and 2019, right? And the common thread was, no, we're not really looking into that right now. Or no, we're focused on this right now. It's not really, I even had someone say, it's not really of importance right now with our overall strategy. Then, right, 2020 came, more specifically, the summer of 2020 came, and then the floodgates were open. And, I don't know that I want to call it intentionality. I think I'll call it just, people going along to get along, like going along with what the soup of the day is or whatever it was. It was everybody's jumping on this bandwagon. And so everybody, within 3 or 4 months, gave off Juneteenth, right, as a holiday, and all these things are happening, right? I'm sitting there thinking, and I was talking to my clients who reached out to me. I'm thinking, okay, that's great. You want to start talking about a diversity strategy, but what is that going to look like a year from now, right? Because what we focus on, Synergy, is sustainable strategies, not temporary fixes, or we're all jumping in and we're all putting in statements of solidarity, and that looks great to our shareholders, right, and our board of directors.
Right.
But what are we doing internally? So now, 2 years, almost 3 years later, what's happening, right? What is happening? How are organizations moving with their DE&I strategy? And so collectively, have organizations lost focus? I think people are still trying to find their focus. What we learned in 2020 was that people were on various points of the spectrum, right? So there were some people who hadn't started at all. Some organizations hadn't started at all. Some folks who had started and stopped. Some folks who had started and thought they were doing well. And then because of the racial and social justice and awareness movement that was happening, they realized, oh, maybe what we were doing wasn't beneficial at all, right? So let's dial this back. So I think while there have been some loss of focus, I think the intention is to have some space for that, but it has to start with self-awareness, right? And I say that at the organizational level. They have to understand that DE&I is not a box to be checked, but yet it is a lifelong journey, right? It goes right up there with your strategic plan, your fiscal plan, your product management plan, whatever those top tier plans are, that's where DEI belongs. And I think that's part of where the struggle is for a lot of organizations, is placing it and centering it there.
Which is so interesting, which leads me to my next thing is you wrote a book.
Yes.
It speaks to what you just talked about, centering diversity, a guide for understanding how diversity shapes our world. And in the book, you really talk about a whole bunch of different constructs that actually have diversity centered, but a lot of organizations don't. I want you to talk to that right now, because to me, this centering diversity, I mean, everybody need this book right here. So y'all, you can get it on Amazon, but everybody need this book. But no, let's talk about that construct. Why is that the case? Because that honestly makes no sense. Dr. Gail Crowder, thank you so much for joining us live on the Dr. Kiki Ramsey Show.
So, hey, Gail, Dr. Gail. So, the constructs that we talk about, and what we tried to illustrate with the book, or what I tried to illustrate with the book, was that diversity, i.e. representation of difference. Let's just simplify this, because I think a lot of these constructs have been so convoluted and misrepresented that people are confused by it. But diversity is simply the representation of difference in a population. That's what diversity is, a quantitative measure. And so what was happening was people failed to realize that diversity is the center of everything that we know about. There is nothing different about our solar system. Every planet is different, right? Every planet is unique. That's what makes it work, right? There's nothing different, there's nothing homogeneous about our geographic landscape. We have some that are by land, we have hilly, we have mountains, we have flat. Like everything around us, right, is centered and the foundation is different. And that works for everything around us. The reason why it doesn't translate well to humans is because we're humans. And so we think, right, we feel, right, we behave, we develop perceptions, we develop attitudes, we develop beliefs about, so we are a human organism, which is different than a rock or a nature type construct that has been either man-made or God-made, right? So what I wanted to show in the book was that if these things and if everything around us is centered in diversity, then in order for us to move forward as humans, we too must be centered in diversity, and it has to start in our workplaces.
Wow. I love that. And I love your analogy of it as well. I think that my thought process has always been like, why is it so hard to center this in organizations if we are all different? Because we are. I mean, we're different. We have lived experiences. Why do you think it's so difficult for us to center this in our organizations?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of answers to that, but I will go with the with the overall, right? Which is because we're humans, right? We are socially, we're in that socialization period. So everything that has to do with sociology has to do with how people react and respond to the environment around us, right? So that's first. And because of the systems, and I talk in the book about general systems theory, which is a scientific theory, right, based off of how systems operate. So I apply that to the workforce to suggest that you can change the systems, right, through the inputs that are going in, through how you process the throughputs, and that will ultimately give you a different output. So there's systems theory, and then there is social dominance theory. And I don't know if a lot of people know about social dominance theory. You mentioned caste, right? Which Isabel Wilkerson's book that talks about the hierarchy in organization.
Right.
Everybody, and I'm kind of scared to say it on here, but I'm not. I'm going to go ahead and say it anyway. CRT, right? CRT, critical. Everybody is so, scared of that theory, but it's rooted in social dominance theory that came out in 2000, which is saying the same thing, how social groups form hierarchies and they maintain those hierarchies based on power, right? And so they oppress everyone else in the hierarchy as a way to maintain the power, as a way to maintain, right? So when you have these systems that are formulated by hierarchies that have been since, we've been here, because when you think about who occupies our workplaces, who occupies the top of, right, that has been there. And so now they have developed into norms. They are the default. They are how our organizations operate. Right. So now we're talking about shifting and moving and dismantling. And therein lies, right, the resistance, and so that's why it's very difficult for a lot of organizations, or for most organizations, to center diversity.
Right. And I think that, when it comes to that, because of course, right, those constructs have been in place for a very, very long time. And I know that when we take, we pull some things apart, people will say, well, that's not how I feel. And that's not, but the majority, right? Like the majority, and just because we do things the way they've been always done. Right. And there are some people who don't want to see those things changed. Right. I think it continues to perpetuate. And so therefore we still have organizations that are run by mostly white men, right? And we're saying is let's diversify. Not that we're saying let's take something away, but I think that that's the conversation that a lot of people hear when we talk about diversity. Let's take it all away, right? We're just saying let's integrate, like let's really us come together so that we can have a difference of thoughts, a difference of processes, a difference of all of these things. And so I think that, but you're right about one thing as well. We still there. We're still in there. We might not always be at the top, but we are there. So why not do this with your leadership?
Because it's power, right? Right. It's power. And and in terms of shifting does require, right, a distribution of power. So you may not have, and you're going to have to give up the power in order for diversity to be effective, because you want a difference of perspectives in how your company needs to move forward, right? You want multicultural leaders that are representative of your employee base and your client base, consumer base. International businesses understand that more. I mean, especially if you want to work globally or you want to move your businesses globally, diversity is a necessity, right? Because you are going to be going into different cultures. You need to have an awareness of different cultures and how different cultures do business. All of those things, the diversity in the languages. So I think there, and the research is clear on how beneficial the outcomes are when you have a more diverse team. It's just the stagnant nature in which organizations move, because they're conditioned to, right, hold up the hierarchy. And now their practices and the systems that I was talking about before have been built to once again maintain that.
And the hierarchy is strong. Right. It's very, very strong. And I think that when we talk about that distribution of power, I think that lies pretty much most of the conversation, right? It really, really does. And the distribution of that is very much. And I think I'm not sure if most people will agree, who are in the position of power will either agree. Let me just say that. Okay. But what I've seen, we both are diversity consultants, right? Like we both. So for what I've seen, a lot of people who sit in the seat of power don't necessarily want to admit that it's a hierarchy and that this power is something to be maintained in this way, right? It's more like, oh no, that's not it. Oh, there's other things. And so they divert the focus on a lot of other things in the organization. We've talked about before, like policies on hiring and all that kind of stuff. And I think all those things are super important as well, right? But when I look at an organization and the first thing that I do is I go to the C-suite leadership. And, the fact that they're calling me or calling you, I get excited, especially when I see that, hey, to me, if you're going to put your money where your mouth is at, this will look different.
Right.
And I don't necessarily see that. And so my hope is always, the goal is, okay, we get you. How do we then transition this to what it needs to look like so that we can get it? Because you mentioned research, and the research is absolutely clear. When you have a diverse slate of leaders in your organization, you're even going to make more money because people are more productive, right? They're 20% more productive when you have that diverse slate, 20% more productive when people come to work and they're happy and they feel belonging. There's so many things that happen in these organizations that allow them to be better when they have a diverse slate of talent.
Right. That's right. And, the research is clear. And as you said, the leaders are the key, because leaders set the tone for the organization where they sit in a position of power, and they have the authority to do all of those areas where we see inequities: pay promotion, recruitment selection, assigning of projects, even terminations, and policies. Right. So we know where they sit, and we know that they have the influence to either maintain the hierarchy or disrupt it in a way that makes sense for everyone and every group. The challenge for some leaders is that these things happen implicitly. They might not see it as a hierarchy or privilege. And we can, get into a whole nother discussion about that. But when we show them data that says otherwise, that they cannot, justify away or rationalize away, then they start to think about, okay, well, let's talk, right? And that takes time
It does.
for folks to get there. You
Yeah.
know, it takes time for folks to get there.
Yeah. And we ain't got a lot of it. I mean, we ain't got a whole bunch of that. So we need to get to the get to it, right? Oh, but Dr. Girl had a really good question. She said, do you think that most companies that have African American and Asians and Hispanics think that they've done enough, and because they look diverse?
No.
Right.
Well, let me answer that in the way she phrased it. Do I think that they think they've done enough? Yes.
Yeah.
Do I think that they've done enough? No.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're thinking, you know, representation is critical. And that's one part of it, because without diversity, there is no equity, there is no inclusion, there is no belonging, which is one of the reasons why I wrote this book too.
Correct.
However, you have to make sure your culture is such that these multicultural people coming in want to stay, that it's safe, right? That they can thrive, that they can be empowered to be their authentic self. So it's, yeah, I mean, for me, no, they haven't done enough. For them, yes, they probably think that they have done enough, but then they'll soon realize that more work is yet to be done.
It is. And I mean, but sometimes they don't realize it before the person is like, I'm out. Yep. Right. Let me go find another place, because they haven't created the psychological safety that is needed for that individual to feel like they belong in that organization and they have something to contribute. It's one thing to work for an organization, but it's another to have a seat at the table. And to be able to have your ideas and your thoughts represented and taken seriously and all those things. And so, oh my gosh. So I want us to jump in, because me and you can talk about this subject all day, but let's talk about centering diversity in organizations. What are some strategies that you think some organizations can pick up in order to begin centering, diversity within the organization, given that this is just a start? Like they're going to have to there's going to be some deep work around this, but like, what is something that an organization can start with?
Well, first, I think education is primary, because people really need to understand diversity, equity, and inclusion as constructs and how they are applied in practice. And a lot of people do not understand these things. And there's been so much mixed messaging in the market that people get confused, and new terms popping up every day. So education, like fundamental education, so that folks understand a common language around DE&I. More specifically, when it relates to those core areas that I mentioned, so the pay and performance, right, the recruitment and selection, the retention, all those areas where we're likely to see inequities, you should be doing some level of examination for disparate impact. And that is simply, are there more groups than others overly represented in how we recruit, in who we pay, right, in who we promote, in who we fire, all of those things. And that's really how you center diversity in all of those areas, by looking at what groups are omitted, number one, what groups are benefiting more than others. And so it's called a disparate impact analysis. But those are some of the strategies that can be applied to really understand your current state.
Correct.
And then once you have your current state, then you can make plans to move forward in the areas that make sense.
Yeah, I love that, because in order to really go from A to B or A to C or wherever you want to go, you got to know where you at right now. So if I don't tell somebody where I'm at right now, if they're trying to give me directions, what the first thing they're going to ask me is, where are you at right now? What do you see around you? What buildings? What's the street name, right, that you're on? And then I can map you to where I am, right? I think it's difficult for some organizations, and I think that some organizations are scared, right? Scared to find out where they're at right now. But that is really the first step. right? How can you build this beautiful diversity plan to begin centering it, to make diversity the fabric of your organization if you don't know where you're at? Right? So
Definitely.
that's the first step. And then once they kind of get to that step and understand, get the diagnostic right, we can then help them with the roadmap, right? To get the education, because I do think the education, I mean, we work with a lot of companies where they just don't know, and it's fine, right? Like I say, it's fine in the sense, if it's fine if you want to know, right? It's not fine if you don't then want to know, right? Because I mean, and we also work, I saw organizations that will say, okay, well, let's start with these managers or these people, but we're going to leave the C-suite out.
Right.
Oh my gosh. Do you see that a lot? Do you see?
It ebbs and flows. I mean, in some clients we see that, some clients, I mean, I'd like to even go as far as starting with the board of directors and then bringing for organizations to have that, because the board has power, that's sort of unspoken power that again has the ability to shift and influence the organizational culture. So if we're going to start at the top, we really should be starting with boards.
I love it. So here we go. So we done mapped out a whole strategy for your organization right now, is that we need to start with the board, go down to the C-suite managers, and so on and so forth. But once we start with the board, we got to do the whole diagnostic, and then all of them, including everybody else in this whole track, need to get training and coaching and development around what diversity, equity, and inclusion is, right? And then it can then be sewn into the fabric of your organization by a plethora of different ways. But if you don't have the knowledge that it takes, like a baseline, we call it like a baseline. You got to have a baseline of what has happened in your company, happens in your own world, the world in which we live. It's amazing to me that there's a lot of stuff that a lot of people still don't know about history. And we just, dropped the word critical race theory. It's history. Yes. Sorry.
Yes.
Sorry. I'm sorry. It's history, right? It's history. And I feel like a lot of people are trying to hide. Well, history has been hidden or not being talked about in the way that it happened.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And it's just, again, that just connects to, and it's further evidence of the misinformation that is in the market, that people hear what confirms their existing beliefs too.
Correct.
Right. So it's that confirmation bias. They gravitate towards things that confirm their existing beliefs. So it takes like a truth lasso, right?
It does.
To get to the heart of it.
So one of the things I think is super important that I would also put out there is, I think that people need to be more curious, right? We love to start our journeys, especially like talking about curiosity, because I think if you can at least be curious enough and open enough to hear that there's a different way to do things, then we'll all be on the same page.
Yes.
We can get there. So, all right, friend. Oh my goodness. We have been talking, and I know we can continue on and on and on, but it is time for us to wrap this show up. So what I want to know though is, I want you to tell people how to get in touch with you, and also how to purchase this gem right here, Centering Diversity, a guide for understanding how diversity shapes our world by Tracie Daniels. Let us know where we can get this at, and how we can get in contact with you as well.
Okay, so you can reach me at Tracie@synergyconsults.com. My website is synergyconsults.com, and we are all on social media. If you type in Synergy Consults HR, you'll find all of our social media pages. The book is available on Amazon. I'm excited in both US and UK because, we launched it in Scotland when I spoke.
That's right. So my friend launched her book in Scotland, honey.
It's available in Amazon US and UK in both soft copy, and not soft copy, but paperback and Kindle edition.
Yay! I'm so excited. Oh my God. It's such a good book and a good read. And I think
Thank
that
you.
all organizations need to get a copy. So hopefully after the show, baby, them book sales will go up because they need this in their hands.
Yes.
And so do you have any last words you want to leave us with?
Well, I just want to say thank you for giving me the opportunity to once again share some education, share some gems with others. And thank you all that are tuning in and watching. But again, you know, Kiki, we're destined to do this work. So
Yeah.
even though it's tough, even though the road is gets very bumpy, but it's worth it, because when I see the organizations or the clients that I work with move, right? When I see them move, when I see the commitment from leadership to moving and progressing, then I know that all the hardship has been worth it. Now, certainly some clients move, I would say, quicker than others, but that doesn't mean that that's better. As long as we're moving, as long as we're progressing, then that is that's key for me. So I'm just glad to be a part. I'm glad the synergy is a part of that.
I am too. You do such amazing and great work, and I'm happy to call you my colleague and also my friend. So thank you so much for being on the show. If you enjoyed today's show and you think that the information that we gave out was valuable, which it was, please share this with a friend or a colleague in your organization. Share it with your senior leadership. Share it with the people who really need to hear this conversation. And if you are a woman professional looking for a group of other women professionals and leaders who are destined to lead happy lives, also while growing professionally, join us over at Happy Women Lead. You can type in happywomenlead.com. And right now, we're actually offering a 7-day free trial for you to join us in the community, to check us out and see what we're all about. All right, y'all. We have been having a lot of fun today. I'll see y'all next time. Take care.